So welcome to day 5. You've made it to the last day unless you're sticking around for tomorrow's bonus day. And today we're going to look at how we move forward and keep our good habits going. It's really easy to make changes in the short term. It's now down to you to turn those changes into really solid, lasting habits. Just like you did at the start of the week, you're going to need to plan ahead to maintain the progress you've made. So you're going to try to get into the habit of weekly planning. You can do all kinds of ways of doing this. You can use a paper diary, you can use an online calendar, or you can just set reminders on your phone. But remember those ideas that make your plans more likely to stick. Be specific. Don't just set aside an hour to do some work in a subject or just study. You have to say what you're going to do. For example, you could say, I'm going to do an hour of biology and I'm going to make notes on these 2 topics. Also need to make it realistic. At the start, this will be more difficult and you'll probably underestimate the time it takes to do certain activities. So don't try and cram study into every hour of the day. You need buffer time, things to go wrong, distractions to happen, just generally things taking longer than you thought. So every time, this is the point of doing a weekly plan, when you look back at your week, you can see where things have gone wrong and where things maybe took more time than you thought, and you can make a more realistic plan for the next week. And you should try to keep your activities varied. So this week we've been concentrating on note making one day, retrieval practice on the second day, and then exam practice questions. But really, ideally, you want to do a mixture of these activities every time you sit down to study. This will help your brain to maintain interest and focus. So a lot of students, they look at other people and they think they're more successful, and they think, I don't know how they study for 2 hours straight. And the reason that they are successful is because they change their activities. No one's going to want to read from a textbook or highlight notes for 2 hours. It's boring and you will switch off and lose your focus. So in your weekly plan, set aside some time for doing note making, some time for retrieval practice, and some time for exam practice questions. You could also think about the best time and place to do each of these activities. For example, maybe doing some retrieval practice with some easy quizzes and fun activities would be a better thing to do when you're a little tired or in a place that's noisy, whereas exam practice questions need to be done at a time when you're clear thinking and in a quiet space. In your weekly plan, you should also, as we said, set aside maybe half an hour to reflect on how the week has gone and plan for the following week. Because of course, it's no good planning your week if you don't then have time to plan the next week. So you need to make that a thing that you have planned out time for as well. And it can be really nice to sit down at the end of a week and see the progress you've made, and it can maintain your motivation. So what about your long-term goals? Well, you need to be specific. If you have something to prepare for, like an exam or a test or assessment, it's a good idea to think about where you're aiming for. Perhaps you have a particular grade or a university course. Write it down and put it somewhere you'll see it. But remember to be realistic with the time that you have and the goal that you're setting. It's a good exercise to really think about the things that might happen to hold you back. What are you going to do when you're tired and you don't feel like studying? What are you going to do when everything feels too busy or when you get tempted by distractions? What are you going to do to overcome these obstacles? Is there any ways that you can preempt them? Are there plans that you can put in place? For example, if you know that your friends are likely to distract you, is there a way that you can plan in time to see them and be with them during the week so that then you don't feel so pressured in your study time to respond to messages and calls? Is there a way that you can plan to get your study out of the way before you get too tired and reward yourself afterwards? So today's challenge is, of course, to do some planning, and it's to plan for the next 2 weeks, just to give yourself a little extra wiggle room and a little extra motivation since you've already put aside this time. If planning for the next 2 weeks doesn't take up the whole of the time you set aside today, then of course a good idea will be to go back over some of the activities we've done on the previous 3 days. There's a long-term goals worksheet that you can download. It will help you think about your plans, your progress, and any obstacles that might get in the way. And something else you can do that's really fun is write an email to your future self. There's more information about this on the long-term goals worksheet. But the idea is to write something that you're going to receive maybe in 3 months or 6 months or even a year's time. You could do more than one. You could do one that's aimed at a much shorter time and one that's aimed maybe a whole year in the future. And there are various ways that you can do this, either by letter or email. There's 2 reasons this is really useful. One is the accountability factor. When you write down your thoughts about where you want to be in a particular time, what you're looking forward to, what you plan to do, the habits you intend to take up, it really helps to set your mind to the future. And when you receive the email or letter, it can be really nice, partly to get you back on track, but also to see maybe about some things that you were worried about that weren't such problems after all.